She shattered records, conquered junior Grand Slams, and made an entire nation believe that impossible dreams could wear a Filipino flag. But on the darkest night of her young career, when the pressure became unbearable and the loneliness of professional tennis closed in around her, the person who quietly reached out was someone nobody expected. Not her coach, not a sponsor, not even one of the many celebrities who suddenly wanted to stand beside her success. It was Mery Perelló, the famously private wife of Rafael Nadal. For nearly 2 decades, Mery had remained almost invisible to the public eye. While the world watched Rafa Nadal lift trophies, battle through injuries, and cement his legacy as the greatest clay court player in history, she stayed away from headlines. She rarely gave interviews, rarely appeared in tennis conversations, and never spoke about the inner workings of the Nadal Academy in Manacor, Spain. Until now, what she revealed stunned the tennis world. Because hidden behind Alex Eala's meteoric rise was a midnight phone call that nobody knew existed. A conversation that changed everything. To understand why it mattered so much, you have to go back to the beginning. Picture a young girl leaving Manila at just 13 years old. A child carrying oversized dreams and a suitcase filled more with hope than certainty. While most Filipino kids grew up dreaming of basketball glory, Alex Eala dreamed of tennis courts she had never even seen in person. There were no Filipino superstars in women's tennis for her to follow. No blueprint. No path already carved. She was walking into the unknown entirely alone. When Alex arrived at the Rafa Nadal Academy in Mallorca in 2018, she was shy, disciplined, and fiercely determined. Coaches immediately noticed something different about her. It wasn't only her timing or her movement. It was the emotional discipline. The calmness under pressure that reminded many inside the academy of a young Rafa himself. Day after day, while others faded under the brutal demands of elite training, Alex stayed. She worked, quietly, relentlessly, and slowly the results began to arrive. First came the junior doubles titles, then the Australian Open Junior crown, then Roland Garros, and finally in 2022 history, Alex Eala became the first Filipina ever to win a US Open Junior Singles Championship. An entire country celebrated. Back home in the Philippines, people who had never watched tennis before suddenly stayed awake through the night just to witness her matches. She wasn't simply winning anymore. She was changing what Filipino athletes believed was possible. But success comes with a price. The higher Alex climbed, the heavier the expectations became. Every tournament carried the weight of an entire nation. Every loss became headline news. Every mistake was analyzed online by thousands of strangers who expected perfection from a teenager still learning how to handle fame. And then came the night that nearly broke her. A devastating defeat. A flood of criticism. Silence from almost everyone around her. According to Mery Perelló, Alex locked herself away emotionally after that loss. She barely spoke. Even inside the academy, people could feel the disappointment surrounding her. That was when Rafa Nadal did something nobody outside the academy ever knew about. Near midnight, after hearing how devastated Alex was, Rafa personally called her. Not as a global icon, not as a legend, but as someone who understood pain better than almost any athlete alive. For hours, Nadal reportedly spoke to Alex about failure, pressure, fear, and loneliness. He told her that tennis can make you feel isolated, even when millions are cheering your name. He reminded her that champions are not defined by victories alone, but by how they survive moments that make quitting feel easier than continuing. And according to Mery, one sentence stayed with Alex forever. Pressure means people finally believe in you. That call changed something inside her. The next morning, coaches noticed a different energy. The sadness had not disappeared, but the fear had. Alex returned to training with the intensity that had first made the academy believe she was special years earlier. Because sometimes greatness is not built under stadium lights. Sometimes it is built in silence, in midnight conversations, in moments nobody sees. And perhaps that is why the bond between Alex Eala and the Nadal family became far deeper than tennis. They did not simply help develop her game. They helped protect her belief when the world around her threatened to crush it. Today, Alex Eala carries more than a racket onto the court. She carries the hopes of millions, the sacrifices of a family, the lessons of a champion, and the memory of one midnight phone call that reminded her she was never fighting alone. Generations of athletes from the Philippines had dreamed of reaching that level, but none had ever crossed the final barrier Alex Eala was now beginning to break. Inside the Rafael Nadal Academy, people noticed. Coaches whispered about her discipline, trainers admired her composure, and somewhere in the background, Rafael Nadal himself quietly kept an eye on the young Filipina, carrying the hopes of an entire nation on her shoulders. At that point, Nadal was still fighting through the final brutal chapters of his own legendary career. His body was failing him more often. Injuries arrived faster than recoveries. Every comeback felt heavier than the last. Yet even while battling the cruel mathematics of time, he noticed Alex. Because pressure recognizes pressure, and Alex Eala seemed born for it. Joan Bosch, one of the academy coaches closest to her development, reportedly saw it before most people did. Talent alone was never enough at the professional level. Plenty of juniors dominated tournaments only to disappear when the real tour demanded emotional endurance. But Alex possessed something rarer: resilience hidden beneath calmness. Still, the professional circuit is unforgiving. Between 2023 and 2024, Eala chased qualification for tennis's biggest stages: Roland Garros, Wimbledon, and the US Open. Each time the dream ended almost immediately. First-round qualifying exits, not losses deep into the tournament, not heartbreaking quarterfinals. The opening match before the main draw had even truly begun. 3 straight Grand Slam qualifying defeats. And perhaps the hardest part was watching others from her generation surge ahead. Mery Perelló, a player Alex had once dismantled 6-4, 6-0 during the 2022 US Open Junior run, was suddenly becoming one of the brightest stars in women's tennis. While Perelló climbed into global headlines, Alex remained stuck outside the spotlight, hovering around world ranking number 140, trapped between potential and proof. Those losses began to accumulate psychologically, each defeat adding weight, each missed opportunity planting doubt. Athletes rarely fear losing matches. What truly terrifies them is the voice that arrives afterward, the one that whispers quietly in the dark. What if I'm not good enough? To the public, Alex still appeared composed, disciplined, focused. But behind the scenes, the emotional pressure was becoming overwhelming. The expectations of an entire country, the sacrifices of moving across the world as a teenager, the loneliness of constantly rebuilding confidence after painful losses. It was all beginning to collide. And nobody outside the academy truly understood how close she was to breaking. What even her biggest supporters did not know was that the hardest night of her journey had not happened yet. It was still coming. And when it arrived, it would come with silence, darkness, and a phone screen glowing just after midnight. But before that moment, you need to understand the woman who made the call possible. Mery Perelló. Most people simply know her as Mery. The tennis world barely knows anything else about her, entirely by design. She met Rafael Nadal when they were teenagers in Manacor, Mallorca, introduced through Rafa's younger sister long before fame transformed their lives forever. Together, they grew up in the same quiet Mediterranean town that would later become home to one of the most famous tennis academies in the world. Mery witnessed everything. She watched Nadal win his first French Open as a teenager. She watched him conquer Wimbledon against Roger Federer, in what many still consider the greatest match ever played. She watched him collapse emotionally after painful defeats. She watched him battle injuries that threatened to end his career over and over again. And through nearly 2 decades of unimaginable global fame, she remained almost completely silent publicly. While many partners of sports superstars embraced attention, interviews, and celebrity culture, Mery chose distance. Privacy became her armor. Even within tennis circles, people described her as deeply loyal, intensely protective, and almost invisible by choice. Which is why what happened next shocked so many people inside the sport. Because when Alex Eala reached the lowest emotional point of her young career, it was Mery Perelló who quietly recognized it first. And it was Mery who convinced Rafael Nadal to make the midnight phone call Alex would never forget. While other partners of global sports icons slowly became celebrities themselves, building fashion brands, giving interviews, cultivating millions of followers online, Mery Perelló moved in the opposite direction. She disappeared from the spotlight on purpose. Quietly, deliberately, almost stubbornly. Instead of fame, she pursued education. earning a business management degree from the University of the Balearic Islands before continuing graduate studies at ESAID in Barcelona. While Rafael Nadal battled across the world's biggest stadiums, Mery focused on building structure behind the scenes, helping oversee the charitable work of the Rafa Nadal Foundation and protecting the stability of the life they had created together away from cameras. When their first son, Rafa Jr., was born in October 2022, the couple shielded him almost entirely from public attention. Then, in August 2025, they welcomed their second son, Miguel, named in honor of Mery's late father, who had passed away 2 years earlier. The public only learned about the birthdays later. That is who Mery Perelló is. A woman who treats privacy like sacred ground. A woman who understands that silence can be more powerful than publicity. And perhaps most importantly, a woman who spent nearly 20 years watching what pressure did to Rafael Nadal from closer than anyone else on earth. She saw the pain behind the trophies, the exhaustion hidden beneath victories, the emotional toll of carrying the expectations of an entire sport for 2 decades. She understood something most fans never fully grasped. Greatness is expensive, not financially, humanly. Which is why the tennis world froze when Mery finally chose to speak publicly about Alex Eala. Because Mery does not comment on players. She does not participate in tennis storylines. She does not publicly discuss Rafa's students, protégés, or academy relationships. Unless something affects her deeply enough that remaining silent becomes impossible. That moment came during a foundation event in Mallorca. It was supposed to be routine. A calm charity gathering, cameras scattered politely around the room, journalists asking predictable questions about the academy and the future of tennis. One Spanish reporter eventually brought up Alex Eala, asking Mery what Alex's remarkable 2025 season meant to the Nadal Academy family. For a brief second, Mery said nothing. Not the rehearsed pause of someone searching for a safe answer. A real pause. The kind that happens when a person is deciding whether to reveal something personal. Then she spoke softly. Rafa cares about her in a way that goes beyond tennis, she said. When she struggles, he feels it. After her worst loss, he could not sleep. He called her. I was there. I heard the conversation. The atmosphere in the room changed instantly. Journalists stopped writing. People looked at each other in disbelief, because nobody knew that call had ever happened. Not Alex's management team. Not Philippine media. Not even the fans who followed every ranking point and every historic breakthrough of her career. A midnight phone call from Rafael Nadal himself. Not after a championship. Not after a victory. After her worst defeat. And suddenly, one question consumed the tennis world. What kind of loss could shake Alex Eala so deeply that even Rafael Nadal could not sleep afterward? To understand the answer, you have to understand what 2025 had become for Alex. Because by then, she was no longer just a talented young player from the Philippines. She had become a symbol, a national obsession. Every match carried headlines before it even started. Every victory triggered celebrations across social media. Every defeat sparked criticism powerful enough to crush athletes far older and more experienced than she was. The pressure was no longer about rankings. It was about expectation. And eventually, expectation became unbearable. To understand why that midnight phone call shattered every emotional wall Alex Eala had built around herself, you first have to understand what the 2025 Eastbourne Open final truly represented. By the time Alex arrived in Eastbourne, her season had already become one of the most extraordinary stories in Philippine sports history. What happened in Miami changed everything. Entering the tournament as a wild card ranked outside the world's elite, Eala suddenly produced a sequence of victories so shocking that even longtime tennis analysts struggled to explain it in real time. First came Jelena Ostapenko, then Madison Keys, the reigning Australian Open champion, dismantled 6-4, 6-2 with fearless aggression that stunned commentators. And then came the match that altered her career forever. Iga Swiatek, a former world number 1, a multiple-time Grand Slam champion, one of the most dominant players of her generation. Alex Eala beat her in straight sets, 6-2, 7-5, breaking Swiatek's serve again and again with a level of composure nobody expected from a 19-year-old, carrying the hopes of an entire nation. The tennis world reacted instantly. This was no longer a feel-good underdog story. This was a warning shot. Even Tony Nadal, Rafael Nadal's uncle, mentor, and the architect of Rafa's legendary mentality, reportedly traveled to Miami personally to observe her progress. Inside the Nadal Academy, people understood the significance immediately. When Alex walked off that court, she was no longer viewed as a promising graduate. She had become a legitimate force in women's tennis. But sudden success creates a dangerous new opponent: expectation. By the start of the grass court season, Alex was no longer competing quietly in the background. Every tournament now carried headlines before the first ball was struck. Every opponent treated her differently. Every broadcast referred to her as the future of women's tennis, the pride of the Philippines, or the next global superstar. Confidence slowly transformed into pressure. And pressure, when multiplied by an entire nation's dreams, can become suffocating. The Eastbourne Open final became the collision point of all those expectations. Across the net stood an experienced top 10 opponent. On the surface, Alex looked calm as always, focused, controlled, composed. But internally, the stakes had become overwhelming. The opening set slipped away narrowly, then the second, then the championship itself. Objectively, reaching a WTA final on European grass was already historic for a Filipino player. Months earlier, people would have considered it unimaginable. But inside Alex's mind afterward, it did not feel historic. It felt catastrophic, because this was not simply about losing a final. It felt like losing proof. Proof that Miami had not been a miracle. Proof that she truly belonged among the elite. Proof that the future everyone projected onto her was actually real. Witnesses later described her behavior after the match as almost unnervingly composed. During the trophy ceremony, she smiled politely, congratulated her opponent, thanked the crowd, and answered media questions with the maturity of a veteran. But people who truly understood elite athletes recognized the warning signs immediately. The stillness, the emotional distance, the frightening calmness that sometimes appears when competitors retreat deep inside themselves after disappointment. By the time she returned to her hotel room, messages were flooding her phone. Philippine reporters congratulated her historic run. Fans celebrated her breakthrough. Her coaching team analyzed tactical adjustments for Wimbledon. The world saw progress. Alex saw failure. Alone in that hotel room, the silence reportedly became unbearable. Not because she had lost a tennis match, but because she feared she had disappointed everyone who believed in her. And somewhere in Mallorca, hundreds of miles away, Rafael Nadal could apparently sense it too. The Academy posted supportive messages. Fans celebrated her ranking breakthrough. Analysts pointed out that the Eastbourne run had pushed Alex Eala closer than ever to the top 50 in the world. But none of it touched the weight she was carrying inside. Because sometimes success can feel strangely invisible to the person living it. Sometime after midnight in Eastbourne, alone in her hotel room with the noise of the day finally gone quiet, her phone suddenly lit up. A Spanish number. A name that years earlier she could barely believe existed outside television screens. The same Rafael Nadal she had once chased through an airport as a nervous young teenager hoping for a photo. This time he was calling her directly. Not a text. Not a voice message. A phone call. According to Mery Perelló, who sat beside Rafa that night, he had been awake for hours rewatching the match. He could not settle emotionally after seeing how devastated Alex looked despite hiding it from the world. Eventually, he stopped watching, picked up the phone, and called. Mery would never reveal the entire conversation publicly. That was never the point. Some moments remain sacred precisely because they are private. But the fragments she did share painted a picture that shook the tennis world. Because Rafa Nadal did not call Alex Eala simply to comfort her. He called her to recognize her pain. As Mery later explained, everyone around Alex was telling her the same thing. You did amazing. You should be proud. Runner-up is still historic. But Rafa understood something deeper. Sometimes athletes do not need reassurance after defeat. Sometimes they need someone to acknowledge how badly it hurts. According to Mery, Rafa told Alex that the pain she was feeling was not weakness. It was proof. Proof that she wanted greatness badly enough to suffer for it. Proof that she was not satisfied merely participating in finals. Proof that she belonged among champions because losing truly mattered to her. And then came the part of the conversation that spread across tennis social media almost instantly once Mery hinted at it publicly. Rafa reportedly told Alex about the night of his own first devastating French Open loss. How afterward he could not eat. How he sat alone in his hotel room staring silently at a wall for hours. How the emptiness and frustration nearly consumed him. But also how that pain eventually became the foundation underneath every victory that followed. Not something to escape. Something to build upon. Mery admitted that while listening beside him, she began quietly crying. Not because the conversation was tragic, because it felt painfully familiar.